So many of you may have seen back in June the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone or the Capitol Hill Organized Protest, known as the CHAZ or the CHOP, depending on when you tuned in and saw. Now, what we saw was an attempt for people to basically take a section of a city, call it autonomous, and basically separate themselves from the United States, live on their own, free of police brutality and all the wrongs that America has done. And they were autonomous. They accepted help from the outside, so weren't fully autonomous, but they claimed, I don't know, it was a mess. And it basically saw them grouping together. Then you saw, over time, them try to grow their own food and do their own thing there, but still needing a lot of help. People eventually started to disagree on why they were there. Fights broke out, shootings broke out, and eventually the zone got, shut down. It was done because it rapidly devolved into violence. So, what do we have now? In Portland, we have another attempt at one of these sort of zones. Now, this one is called the Chinook Land Autonomous Territory. Now, if you're following along with that, the acronym for that is CLAT. So this new zone we have is not the CHAZ or the CHOP, it's the CLAT. You can say that a few times if you want, just to get used to it, but I never really did get used to that. Okay, so what's going on? Protesters attempt to form so-called autonomous zone in Oregon parks. Protesters are attempting to form what they call the Chinook Land Autonomous Territory in downtown Portland, Oregon parks. Demonstrators began erecting tents in Lonsdale Square on Tuesday night. The park is located across the street from the federal courthouse and was home to the Occupy Portland encampment in 2011. As of 5 a.m., about a dozen demonstrators remained in the zone. Police said protesters are calling for racial equality and law enforcement reform, first gathered at Revolution Hall in Portland Tuesday night, before marching to downtown and gathering at Pioneer Courthouse Square. After listening to speakers, some of the people left the square and went to the Justice Center, while others left the area. Around 9:15 p.m., police said the group by the Justice Center began blocking traffic. They set up barricades on the streets, and they lit a fire where the elk statue once stood at the intersection. And shortly after 1 a.m., demonstrators began walking to Portland Bureau's Central Precinct. Police said they removed some of the barricades, but demonstrators returned to the area and reportedly threw glass bottles at the officers, and the group rebuilt the barricade. So if you go over here to Twitter, we have Garrison Davis here kind of did a whole thread on what was happening with the law enforcement officers over a period of time around 3 a.m. to like 4 or 5 a.m. So he goes through, you have law enforcement showing up here, and they're protecting some of the buildings. And over time, they, start to clash with the protesters and start firing tear gas, using stun grenades and pepper bullets, different types of munitions, he says, all being fired at the protesters, get them to back off, similar to how we saw before. And right here, they start dismantling the barricade, knocking it down, clearing it out, knock it all down. So fire more tear gas and whatnot. And over time, with the protesters responding, the federal officers kind of retreat and go back to the courthouse around 4 a.m. and leave. So we'll just look at some of the pictures here. These are just some of the barricades they have up, Chinook Land Autonomous Territory. You have like an anarchy symbol, Black Lives Matter fist thing. Abolish pigs in prisons. So you have people calling for the abolishing of police and prisons. Chinook Land Autonomous Territory, the CLAT with the anarchy A thing, just some pallets and some metal barricades, it looks like, for the most part. So nothing too special there, just little tiny barricades right now. So as of right now, it doesn't really appear to be too much of an issue. It's way, way smaller than the CHAZ, and it's just a few barricades right now with some people and some tents set up. And we don't know if it's going to escalate to the point that CHAZ did or not. It just depends on how the city is going to respond. And if law enforcement backs off and gives up the zone, we could see something very similar to what happened in Seattle happen here. And, that could dictate if more of these pop up around the country. if the city comes in, shuts it down right now, or the government comes in, shuts it down right now, and continues to do that each time one of these tries to pop up, then maybe not. But if this becomes somewhat, I know CHAZ wasn't successful, but if it becomes a sort of long-running thing that's almost a month long, then, more people might get the idea to do this. That's where they obviously got the idea from. You can tell it's kind of modeled after how the CHAZ was. But it's really a shame that we have these sort of things pop up. And if you notice, the people, again, a lot of this is going to be referencing the CHAZ because this thing hasn't developed, but in these autonomous zone type places, the people that inhabit these places are very emotional and angry and don't want to be disagreed with. And we saw that people who went into these type of zones, if they disagreed with the people there, were kind of speaking about a message that people didn't agree with, they were a lot of times met with violence. And if it wasn't violence, it was people getting right up in their face, screaming, shouting terrible things at them, basically scaring them into leaving. And they don't want to have conversations about fixing these things. So you have people there for different reasons. Even from the signs in this new zone we saw, we have people who have this idea that this land belongs to the Chinook tribes and needs to go back to them. You have people there that are just there about defunding the police and, getting rid of prisons. You have people there that are about, Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter protests. It's a bunch of different kind of ideologies all stemming from this one place, and later on they start to agree or disagree, as we saw in the CHAZ, and violence starts to break out. But as of right now, they're all kind of together there, and they're there for different reasons. But it's really a shame that people in these zones can't get together and come up with like real working solutions that we can, reasonably talk about. Instead, they act on very extreme emotion and come up with these radical results, such as completely get rid of law enforcement and anything to do with the United States, and we're our own complete separate zone. And then when it only lasts for like a month and then breaks down. Because one, they're not truly autonomous. They're trying to partially rely on the United States, and then they're cutting out the parts that protect them so people come in and do what they want. But on top of them not being or acting on emotion and doing all this, it makes you wonder what the motivation behind it is for a lot of them. Because a lot of these people have this idea that things aren't equal or things aren't fair, right? So, people with like Black Lives Matter have this idea that there's racial unfairness in the system. There's some people that just believe that, maybe it's just the police and that there's problems with the police departments and those need to be changed and it's unfair there. Then there's those that think their land, like I said, their land was stolen by early American settlers and they want it back. So, a lot of different motivations and a lot of different beliefs there. But there's some sort of belief of unfairness. That's why they set up this zone. But if, you hear this message of we want equality, we want things to be equal. And I'm not saying that things are unfair or aren't unfair in these certain areas. That's another topic for another time. But they believe that it is unfair. At least they're saying it is. But what they're fighting for is not to make things equal or to make things fair. That is not the goal. And you can tell by what is being asked for. If the goal was to make things equal and fair and whatnot, you would have them, sitting down with people, coming up with solutions on what works best for everybody, not just screaming, get rid of the police, defund the police, wash these people's feet, whatever you've seen out there. Instead of fighting for equality, it appears that they're fighting for an advantage and to have some sort of higher ground over other people. And that's not equality. That's, putting yourself in the most advantageous position possible without worrying about the consequences that affect others. And if they can get away with it and do that, they're happy and they've got the job done because now they've situated themselves at a, advantageous point in society. And I don't think that's good and moral, honest motivation. but a lot of people don't necessarily have the same, morals and beliefs that others have, and they don't really care too much what affects others. But if they can find a way to position themselves in the, I would say, the highest point possible during their lifetime, they're going to take that opportunity at the expense of other people. So then you have, they're realizing that this radical type of reaction gets people fired up and gets people to act on emotion and get behind them, and realizes there's advantages to it, whether it be, some small monetary gains, such as you're able to loot some places, or you're able to, get something free, or get sort of a handout, or something that's going to put you in a better position without having to work for it and without having to really do anything other than just get angry. People are going to take that opportunity, especially if, like I said, they're not, they don't have certain morals guiding their behavior. And I think that's what you see with a lot of the people in these zones. You just see a lot of people doing what they want to get ahead. And like I said, we don't have a lot of info on this new place yet. We're going to see here over the next few days, I'm sure, how it's going to develop. But we need to, speak out against these things still and try to work with people. If you're one of these that gets fired up about this stuff, just take a step back a minute. When you try to change things, you don't want to jump in head first when you're angry about something. People don't often make good decisions when they're just raging mad or upset about something. You really need to think things through, and you really need to talk about it with other people. That's going to be the best way to move forward. If you don't like our current law enforcement system, or you think there's problems with it, talk with others, identify where the problems are at, and then look at solutions to fix those problems. And instead of just saying dismantle the whole thing, like you have this entire system set up that things operate on, and you just want to completely wipe the slate clean and start over. That disrupts a whole lot more than trying to tweak it and perfect it and make it better. And come up with actual solutions if you think maybe, for instance, if you think that, the training for law enforcement officers isn't good and they need a lot more training in specific areas, or you need different, facets added into the system, talk about that. Or maybe you think that, we just can't achieve that in large cities because smaller towns, they know their law enforcement's an issue of personal connection. Maybe you want to look at, dispersing people from the big cities and have us all spread out more. Whatever it may be, look at other solutions rather than just completely dismantle everything, let there be no law, and then people end up getting shot or hurt or looted or abused in these zones. Same goes for any other beliefs that people hold in the areas with regards to these things. But yeah, we'll see where this goes. If you know people that maybe want to jump on this bandwagon and get hyped up about and go to one of these zones, and you have one of those people that yell and scream like this, try to encourage them to. I don't know how you do it either. You somehow try to shift these people out of this, emotional raged mode into this let's have a conversation mode and let's fix things. Because I think that's how we're going to do better, and maybe we'll get to a point where we don't have people trying to go out and create their own mini countries inside different cities in the United States. But that'll do it for this video. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you liked it, please leave a like. It helps with the YouTube algorithms and whatnot. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll keep you notified on what happens with this zone. Who knows? Tomorrow I may be posting a video about how they completely shut it down and nothing's happening there. Or maybe in a few days we'll see another CHAZ CHOP pop up. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you in the next segment. You guys have a good one.